Hi, and welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking. This time, we're thrilled to welcome folks from Universities Canada's Innovative Designs for Accessibility contest. For the past few years, we've worked with Universities Canada, and they've brought some of their idea winners to the Forward 50 conference in person. And while we can't do that this year, we were thrilled to have the opportunity to bring them on to talk about what they've been doing. Universities Canada is a membership organization that is the unified voice for sort of higher education throughout Canada. And each year they run a competition called the Innovative Designs for Accessibility Student Competition. And it challenges students across Canada to create innovative, cost effective, and practical solutions that knock down accessibility barriers. Since Forward 50 is about making technology better for everyone, or using technology to make society a better place, we thought that it would be a great opportunity to showcase some of the amazing work that these students are doing. And the winners this year are breaking down physical, technological, systemic, and attitudinal barriers to try and make their campuses and their communities more innovative, more prosperous, and above all, more inclusive. So, IDEA has four different categories of proposals: attitudinal and systemic barriers, architectural and industrial design barriers, technological and communication barriers, and virtual learning and distance education. And we're going to talk to the winners from each of those four categories. And the team, we're going to be speaking to Mitali and Lillian, have a 3D drawing toolkit for blind and partially sighted drawers. Because if you're blind or have low vision, then being able to draw well in different situations obviously is vital, but extremely difficult to do. So, how do you use multidimensionality and haptic feedback to allow people to draw things and create designs? And the winning team here is Mitali Kamat and Lillian Fan. So, Mitali and Lillian, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Alistair. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So I love this idea. I think that the idea of being able to express yourself, particularly in digital media and in multidimensional media, is something that as we become sort of digital creatures and communicate so much and express ourselves, has the risk of dramatically widening the gap between those who can access information and communicate and those who can't. So in your case, maybe Mitali, you can tell me a little bit about what the toolkit is, and then we'll get into how you kind of came up with the idea.
Sure, yeah. So this came out of the major research project I was working on as a part of my inclusive design program at OCAD. And the project is essentially the design is, I can split it up in two parts. And one is the 3D drawing toolkit, which is the analog component. It consists of geometric tiles with magnets that you can snap together. It also consists of multiple flexible components like wax sticks, Play-Doh, other aspects that you can use to build product 3D models. And it also consists of a digital scanning app which allows the user to scan the geometric components and simultaneously creates a virtual model that they can share with sighted users.
So build it in the 3D world using analog tools, and then bring it into the digital world as a sort of digital framework. Lillian, how does the person know that the thing they've created has been successfully reproduced in the virtual version?
So there will be some audio response inside the tools, and like when they scan the tools, like scan the piece, and the audio will say like the something being scanned, like the triangle being scanned, and like after they finish scan, they will like the audio will say like there will. You can click on the screen and to generate the 3D model, and after user click, and the audio will also tell user like the 3D model is generated.
So provide some amount of feedback. Now, I noticed in the
Yeah.
description for your project that there's something called a raised line drawing toolkit. Mitali, can you explain what that is?
Sure. So this is Raceline graphics or Raceline toolkits are what are commonly or commercially available right now. They're the most commonly used method for converting visual graphics and making them accessible for blind and partially sighted. However, despite this, there's not a whole lot of representation for blind and partially sighted in, say, STEM education. So we wanted to explore why that is, and if, say, someone who's a blind user who has never been exposed to sight early on, can they still build mental models using just a raised line graphic?
So when you say build mental models, you mean like come up with an idea in their head of something that's represented visually?
Yeah, so if, say, I was building a perceptual model of a triangle, I know what a triangle looks like. I know that has three lines, and I can maybe use wax sticks to make those three lines. But if I had never been visually exposed to what a triangle looks like, how will my how will I understand what a triangle is? I guess
I guess that
that.
that starts to border on philosophy, right, Lillian? Like the question of knowledge and epistemics and stuff. So Lillian, how did you go about trying out this? Obviously, you have lots of physical things, but as some of the other winners have mentioned, it was COVID. How did you go about testing these things out?
For the testing stuff, first, as like for me, I'm more focusing on the technical part. So when I build the software, the tool, like I always test by myself. Also, sometimes like I just cover my eye to pretend like I can see and like test if I can understand things. And for the user test part, I like Metally did most the user test part if you want to.
Y-
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
can talk
so
about it.
yeah. Before we get to you, Matali, Lillian, you're doing the first usability testing by just essentially putting on a blindfold.
Mhm.
Did that change how you perceived people who have issues with sight? Like, did that change how you felt about their lives and their world?
Yeah, yeah, it's really different. Like they need use they need like try to touch and feel like what the shape is that piece, and to put them together also like harder because like they need to very like to connect each piece will be like harder for them to doing that.
Yeah, Natalia, I once went to one of those blind dinners. It was a fundraiser for someone who was blind and needed surgery, and everybody put on a blindfold and they served food, but everyone at the table had to cooperate. So you had to like figure out how to pass the bread and stuff. Definitely pre-COVID, but it was such a remarkable experience to. I mean, I would say it opened my eyes, but that's horrible phrasing. But it was such an incredible experience to go, wow, I took all these things for granted. And we've heard, through the past two contestants, not being able to put on a bra because you might not have the use of both of your limbs, or not being able to put together your wardrobe because you can't tell what your clothes are. We take so many of these things for granted. Um, can you tell me, in a professional sense, if something like this exists, if you have a better way for people to draw in 3D, how does that change the careers that people who are blind or partially sighted can explore, and how does that change sort of inclusion and the roles they can play in society now with these new tools?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it gives a lot of access to higher education. Just awareness of what kind of industries they can and cannot access right now with the barriers that are in place, especially COVID. I think that was everything moved to virtual, and we say a lot of things like, "Oh, I'm going to hold this up and explain this aspect of the brain," but okay, but how does someone who is blind and partially sighted access that? So I think I would say what we explored largely was STEM. And even though Lillian talked about blindfolding, that experience is not close to someone with lived experience
Well,
without
presumably
vision.
Lillian has an idea what a triangle is before using the tool,
Yeah,
like, or whatever.
yeah,
You're bringing
absolutely.
preconceived models that you can expand on.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the two blind and partially sighted users that we worked with over this period of 18 months, they were both from a design background, and then it was very important to them to access drawing tools, and so having sort of first-hand experience that they had in co-designing with them was kind of made us more aware as to which fields are still not accessible, and hopefully some sort of way that this tool will help move that forward.
Amazing. Thank you.